Hey there, thank you for tuning into While We Were Working. We're so thrilled that you are joining us today and have decided to spend time leveling up your HR leadership wherever you are in the world. I think we recently charted in the Netherlands. That's crazy to me. But getting back on topic, I want to talk to you about While We Were Working, which is our show. Summer Ketron is our consulting practice manager. She is our co-host. And I'm Joey Price. I am host here. But we're going to talk about two topics that are critically important. One, there's a recent research report that says that long hours might lead to something other than productivity, and you don't want to miss what that might be. And then the second thing is, have you ever prematurely promoted someone and then you were stuck figuring out, what do we do next? Well, on this show, we're going to cover those two topics: long work hours and the pitfalls of premature promotion on this episode of While We Were Working. So, Summer, how's it going? Could you please set us up for While We Were Working?
Joey, and thanks everybody for joining our show this week. I love these two topics that we have, and if this is your first time joining us, the While We Were Working segment is where Joey and I, we read a whole bunch of articles, we scour blogs, we scour the web, we look for something in the news that catches our eye that would be a great value add for us to chat about on the show. And, this one from our friends over at SHRM, it's not a new topic, but I do think it's one that it's important we keep our eyes and our focus on to ensure that, we're not one of those companies and we're providing support to other companies who may find themselves in this situation so that, they don't have burnt out workers. And, Joey, this is a topic I think we've covered at least once in prior episodes. And, well, quite frankly, I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
No, I think that this is just a perpetual thing that we are going to be dealing with. Long work hours, productivity, work-life balance. I think until we figure this out, it's going to not be a problem we solve, but maybe rather a tension that we manage. And we have to figure out when we're pushing too fast and need to pull back, and when we need to push harder because we're going too slow. But what does the article say? What should we learn from this?
Well, I'm going to try to hit the highlights because there's definitely a lot to cover. But I think to set the stage, we can start by saying that in the survey, it was determined that approximately 40% of those surveyed, and there was over 10,000 workers surveyed between August and September of last year, 40% of those employees regularly worked after hours, and half of them felt pressured to do so. And it was primarily due to time constraints and competing priorities. And Joy, that just makes me sad.
Yeah. I mean, the pressure of it, now I get it. We are all a part of a mission. We sign up for a mission to make something happen, right? We want to make widgets. We want to help people. We want to solve legal challenges. We want whatever it is that we sign up to do at work. But the pressure piece of it seems like there's a bit of intentional design to the way our workplaces are constructed, and I am guilty of this as well. Summer, we were talking about the mentorship thing that you and I were discussing. And do you want to know where I put it on my calendar? Because I did put it on my calendar. It doesn't go on my calendar. It doesn't exist. But I literally put it on at 10 p.m. because I knew, all right, I'm going to put the dog down to sleep, and then I'll have some free time to think before he has to wake up and do his nap. But I think that's just where we are, where it's like you got to find the rhythm that works for your life, but at the same time, I would hope that rhythm allows you, 40 hours as opposed to feeling like 70, 80 a week has to be sustainable.
Yeah, and I do think that's where there's perhaps some differences here. I mean, I think working after hours is one thing, like if that's just the work schedule that you prefer, right? I think that's one thing. But if you're a team member who's working the traditional, kind of work hours, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, but then you're continuing to work all the way into the night and you feel pressure to do so because you have that much work to do, I think we can all agree that that is exactly how burnout occurs. And, digging into some of the details of this survey, they were able to measure productivity scores. And I was really fascinated by the fact that employees who actually logged off at the end of their workday showed 20% higher productivity scores. And that was pretty that was a pretty big number for me to really kind of stop and think about the importance of having an end of your workday versus, sometimes it all just kind of blurs together. So you work at the pace that, may extend your day a little later in the night. But there's something to be said about I need to really, really focus and work at a fast pace to be done at a certain time, and then I'm done. I mean, the proof is in the numbers. They are indeed more productive.
And someone's probably looking at that and they're probably in disbelief because we know those bad bosses who think that if your team's not working late hours, if your team's not in the building, right, they're not working, they're not productive. But I've read a really good book. Probably it had to have been about 6 years ago. I don't think that I read it when it first came out, but you probably heard of it. It's called Essentialism by George McCowan. And it's called Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And as much as it's about kind of decluttering your life and decluttering things, it commands you to think about, well, what are the most essential things that need to get done in a day? Because we often, whether it's work or not, we fill our lives up with things that, ultimately, they don't matter, right? If I'm on my phone playing a video game, right, is that ultimately gonna lead to maximum happiness? Is it ultimately gonna if I get a high score, is it gonna change the world? No, it's not, essential. And it's just one school of thought. But the idea of focusing on what truly is essential, I think those are the people who master this art of time management, of prioritization, and they're able to be productive because they can say, okay, I have a finite amount of time to do a finite amount of things. How should I shape my day? And when do I know it's time to call it quits? And so, I would agree with the numbers. I've seen it. When I work long hours, there's a law of diminished returns, where the longer you work, the less productive you are. And so, yeah, I can see that for sure.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple other key findings in this survey that, are pretty eye-opening as well. I think, especially for somebody who lives and works in California, and I've worked with a lot of hourly team members, there's a lot of requirements in regards to meal and rest breaks. And in this article, I'd read that 50% of those that responded didn't take work breaks. And that when the numbers were crunched on this survey, they determined that those not taking breaks were actually over 1.5 times more likely to experience burnout. I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise, but I think, again, the shocking thing for me is, here we have, 40% of people who are already saying they're regularly working after regular hours. Half of the respondents aren't taking breaks. I'm like, sounds like a recipe for disaster. And indeed it is.
Yeah, and this is the top of the year. This is where people, think about, is my life adding up to what I wanted to add up to? Am I making the right calls about things? And so I would imagine that taking a look at the survey, having your own self-reflection, you're probably watching or listening to this and you're like, maybe there's something I should be doing differently, or maybe things that I want to commit to differently. Because we know how this movie ends. We know how this movie ends if there's a lot of effort, particularly if it's unappreciated, particularly if it's things that you could scale back and not do, so that you can stay in that realm of essentialism.
So when I think about being a people leader and, the advice that I would share with other people leaders is to make sure that you're paying close attention to the hours that you see your team on Slack, the hours that you see emails coming in. And I'm not saying like be a clock watcher. That's not the tier, but it is to note, like, if you have a team member or team members who seem like they are always working, don't ignore it. It's an important conversation to have because, maybe there are things that can be done to help support them or to give them permission to create those boundaries. And if you're able to kind of run some interference on this, then not only are you really taking care of your team members and their well-being, but also by default, you're helping the company by ensuring that you have, the healthiest, most productive workers as well. And in that case, Joey, everybody wins.
I agree. That's that old concept of management by walking around, but it's management by checking active statuses on social accounts. And yeah, definitely will go a long way.
It will, because I find, oftentimes employees don't always feel comfortable saying, "Hey boss, like, I can't ever get caught up," or "Hey boss, like, I'm still doing the work of two people." Remember, like, those conversations that sometimes, you just get busy and they, perhaps like turn into a situation that was never intended.
Yeah.
But certainly needs to be addressed. So really great topic. I'm glad that we were able to chat about it a little bit on our show, and hopefully you're listening, you're thinking about your team. If this sounds like it might be familiar in your organization, that this prompts further discussions and some action to protect the well-being of your team.
Yeah, let me just say this real quick too, because as a I guess as a CEO and then as an HR person, I hear all sides of the coin of like, being softer is too pro-employee and it takes away from productivity. But in our notes here, we talk about or the survey talks about Elon Musk and his approach to long hours. You gotta grind, you gotta drive. I don't know if you saw, but they as in Tesla got rid of merit increases, and there's just a lot of unbundling of the employee experience that he's doing, that Elon is doing at Tesla and likely other organizations he leads or influences. And in 2024, can we just call a spade a spade? Like, you can be a celebrity boss and still be a terrible boss. You can have amassed wealth and still be a terrible boss. And I just believe being guided by principles, being guided by empathy, being guided by what is the consensus that people want is most important. So, you won't find me saying, well, it's good enough for Elon, it's good enough for me. probably the opposite. If we're doing something that he's advising, we might want to corroborate our sources. Think it can, but I just wanted to say that, and I know we're transitioning to consultants corner, but we got to call out bad leadership in 2024.
Yeah, that's, gosh, so much to talk about, but it is very true that, there's a lot of ways to lead people. And just because somebody is successful doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good people leader. And to, really think through the impact that decisions have on your team. And speaking of teams, we have very exciting Consultants Corner topic. And for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, this is where Joey and I, we take questions from our communities. We chat with our consultants a high level about topics that they're encountering in the trenches. And we talk about them on the show so that, you can hear what it's like a day in the life of a consultant and how we tackle some of these very common questions or challenges, with hopes that you can take something away for your organization as well.
Yeah. So this one, we started at the top of the show, and I asked, have you ever promoted someone too prematurely, and then you realize maybe they weren't ready yet? Maybe they weren't who they said they were. Maybe they needed some coaching and development. Maybe they just didn't have as high of a emotional, maybe an EQ, emotional quotient, as you thought. But have you ever done that? And if you have, would love to see your comments on social or shoot us an email. But this is just a conversation around what happens if you promote someone too soon. How do you walk that back? Or do you walk it back? I don't know. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. But I can definitely recall in professional life, I can recall in volunteerism, maybe identifying folks who I think, oh, you might be a good leader to volunteer, and then it explodes. And then, we won't have to go there in depth, but even promoting friends to girlfriends, and then it just like, nah, that it didn't work out. But with work, what are some of the pitfalls of a premature promotion? And even their good intentions, what do you do when you realize that maybe somebody's not ready yet?
This is a pretty common problem, Joey. I have to say that, in my 25 plus years of working in HR, I can't even count how many times a manager has said, hey, I'm ready to promote this team member. What do you think? And I'm like, I don't think they're ready yet. And, it's tough because I want to be the one that helps somebody grow their career, and I want to be the one to say yes. So to be the one to say no is really tough, but it comes from a place that is actually like well-intentioned, because, promotion itself has, a very positive message, but promoting somebody too soon actually can create a difficult situation for the company, for the individual being promoted, and the team, kind of the peers. And I think the one that we often see the most is that when there's a skill or knowledge gap, Joey, the individual in that role is likely going to be stressed. They're likely going to be frustrated. It's reasonable to expect that, we talked about productivity. Their productivity is going to go down. And this can collectively be a very big weight for a newly promoted individual to try to overcome, if they're able to. And I think the couple other items that will add to that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Joey, is that, have you ever been on a team and like maybe your peer gets promoted and everybody is like, really? And it's not meant in a mean way, right? But like
Yeah.
certainly the team maybe had like a different thought as to whether that individual's qualified or other individuals are better qualified. And so, I say that's usually a sign. Like hiring manager comes to me, right? Ask that question. I like to promote this person. What do you think? I usually ask like, how do you think this would be received by the team? And that's a pretty good indicator, because if the team is like, yeah, I think that'd be a really great idea, that's a positive indicator. But if the team is like, I'm not sure, then that should be a sign as well that
Yeah. Yeah.
that person's probably not quite at that level yet.
Yeah, I've been in that situation, and it's not always when someone is stepping into a new opportunity, right? Uh, it can also be when someone leaves an organization and then by default a new leader has to be chosen. I can think about, as an example, anyone who's in an interim role or appointed interim leader, interim director, whatever that the case may be there. And that may be it may be premature. It may also be temporary, but yeah, I've been there, and it's like, oh well, why'd you choose them? And it doesn't bode well for the work culture when there's a clear miss on promoting somebody that the team now has to go from probably thinking this person was incompetent to now having to support them. So I've definitely seen it. I've definitely seen it.
Yep. And to kind of build on that situation that you were describing, Joey, because I think the situation where there's a vacancy as the result of a departure, as opposed to like a promotion due to like another internal promotion, like, something that's a little more strategic and planned. Those are often the situations where I see companies select the next leader, right? Not necessarily like building their bench to get there thoughtfully. And those are more frequently the situations where they may encounter an individual that's being promoted prematurely. And one of the things that I've seen in terms of we talk about pitfalls, is the impact on company culture. Because if there is, kind of this erosion of trust from the other team members about the fairness of advancement opportunities, that definitely impacts the organization as a whole. And it's super important that there is that fairness, that there is the opportunity for advancement that is, equal for everybody who may want to, pursue those. So when they see somebody being promoted who's not quite ready, it does kind of bring a big question mark. And
Yes.
I've even seen team members leave because of it, because they just don't think that the opportunities that they were working towards are going to be available to them simply by continuing to work hard.
Yeah, it's definitely a hit to the team. It's a hit to the individuals. I think that I wrestle sometimes with like being a smaller organization, and it's like, oh well, how bureaucratic do you have to be, right? Like we're all adults here. We can figure this out. And I don't say that like in the context of our organization. I just say it like, every small business in America, right? But there is some merit to having clear, at least if not clear pathways to leadership, then at least clear understanding of like how to compete once an opportunity is possible. And I know those are some of the things that some of you're great at helping to write those things for our clients. And if anyone needs a comp plan, a bonus plan, or anything, Summer's who you talk to. But I do think that one way that we can reduce premature promotions and kind of open up that equity a bit so people can throw their hands in that is to have clear expectations of like, all right, there's an opportunity coming. If you identify that you are interested, let us know, and we'll tell you what it takes, and we'll monitor progress over a defined period of time to see, who we think is the best fit. So yeah, I think there is a healthy measure of like process, protocol, SOPs, even if you have a smaller team.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'll say before, I think we should also chat about like, well, what to do if you have promoted and it's just not working out. But I wanted to chat just really briefly, Joey, about, you mentioned, kind of having criteria, and I like the thing that comes to my mind is some career paths that I built for a client where they had quite a few team members. They were pretty large, and there were a lot of middle management positions, and folks kind of worked their way up. And there was the need to really try to identify kind of the key skills for each like kind of level of progression. And this was actually published to the team members so that they could kind of do some inner reflection to say, okay, I'm in this role now. Here are the skills that are necessary for somebody who may be more junior to grow into my role. And if I have my eyes on the next position, here are some of the responsibilities and key skills and indicators so that team members know what they need to work towards, but they can also self-assess and say, oh gosh, I still need to work on these two before I'm really at that level. And I thought it was just such a wonderful way to make it really clear and transparent so that everybody was kind of working on the same metrics.
Yeah. And that's a major thing for equity, major thing for making sure that everybody feels like they're on the same page. Make sure that everybody feels like they know what the standards are, the metrics are to get to that ultimate opportunity. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. Do you have any thoughts or parting thoughts you want to share about this topic?
I do. I just wanted to leave our listeners with, kind of the parting message that, ideally you don't find yourself in the situation of promoting somebody prematurely, but if you do, there is a path forward. And I think it's never a place that anybody wants to be, but it's completely okay to work with, somebody who's been promoted on a performance plan to provide them additional coaching, additional support and training if the will is there. I'm not a fan of demotions, but I do think that sometimes it is the appropriate step to put somebody in that space where they can thrive. And that's always the conversation I have is like, I want to put somebody in the lane where they can run their best, they can perform in a way that feels good and that they're truly happy with. It's never fun to be in a lane where you constantly feel like you're never quite going to get to the finish line. And in those cases, sometimes that's the necessary, appropriate step.
Yeah, I could have said it better myself, and I think that's a good spot to wrap up the show. We talked at the start of it about long work hours leading to burnout, not productivity. And we're wrapping this show up about premature promotion and what to do next. I don't have anything else to add to it, so we'll wrap it here. Summer, as always, thanks for your expertise and the thought you put into making the show great every week. And for our listeners, community, thanks for tuning in and engaging. I saw that we charted in the U.S. over Christmas break, so that was fun. Top management podcast in the States. So pretty cool things, and thank you for tuning in, sharing with your friends and colleagues. And until next time, have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.